Hello everybody. Oh, Happy New Year, January 1st, 2011. This is copyright 2011, Lisa Baumgardner, BS, MBA, all rights reserved, Lisa Inc., EURL, cuteCatFace.com. I was looking through some of my papers, and I found this photocopy of a picture. I don't remember if it was by Sen Kwang Chi or I think it was by Sen Kwang Chi, the late Sen Kwang Chi. And there you see Keith Haring with a graffiti artist whose name I don't recall. I'm sure I have it written down somewhere. I've got a ton of stuff here in scrapbooks and photo albums, and I've got movies that I made, manuscripts to be published and everything. Alright, now there has been some interest recently in, again, in some of my work as an independent publisher, as a zinester. I actually was a real publisher and record producer. And I'm in the book Modern Women, published by the Museum of Modern Art, which came out in 2010. This was my second group show at MoMA, and I am in a lot of permanent museum collections. Now, I found this. It was written on pink paper. Pink is my fetish color. And this explains a little bit about how and why I started doing zines in the 70s. In 1977, while attending Kent State University, I suddenly felt that a magazine might be a good way to express myself graphically. My first attempt was called Modern Girls, was offset, and unbound because I had no idea how binding was done. I fastened the pages with staples, had about 100 made, and even though it looked terrible, I felt very proud. The cover was an intaglio print, since I was still involved in more traditional studio art studies at the time, and depicted Deborah Harry of Blondie and Patti Smith, two new wave singers, looking very menacing. The title Modern Girls was formed in the poison pen method. That is, each letter was cut out and pasted down individually, because I did not know how to use press type or anything similar. I later saw that poison pen method used in many punk and new wave graphics, such as the Sex Pistols album, Never Mind the Bollocks. And suppose I must have seen it there, although I don't recall doing so. It was a very popular style in 1977. I may have inspired them, they may have inspired me. I think my stuff came first, but it doesn't matter, you know. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? All the contributions in the first few Modern Girls were by girls only, but soon I realized that ruling out half the population as potential contributors would be detrimental to my cause, whatever my cause was, which was probably just energetic, raw self-expression. Modern Girls was done as a Xeroxed fanzine from issue 3 through 5. Then it was discontinued. The first two issues were offset printed. During the course of its publication as a monthly magazine, I had dropped out of Kent State, moved to Westchester, New York, to work as a governess, and transferred to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Antioch was very understanding when I asked to take a leave of absence. I wanted to move to New York City and publish a magazine there. I also wanted to be with Peter Zaremba, who was my first real boyfriend. That's another story. Modern Girls contained artwork and writing, usually in the form of personal correspondence, sent to me through the mail. It fell into the category of mail art, and was exhibited in as many shows as I found out about to enter. The masthead of Modern Girls was included, thus immortalized, in Anna Banana's female art issue of Vile magazine. This is in the Modern Women book by MoMA this year. A book-form compendium of male art, this particular issue being all female art by women in 1978. Although I have never been interested in expressing feminist concerns, I have attempted through these little magazines to describe my world as I perceived it as a young girl. My problems, obsessions, misconceptions, and reaction to living in the East Village were all faithfully recorded. For this reason, these magazines have become self-portraits, albeit light-hearted ones that hopefully others could laugh at and relate to. You can still get Bikini Girl, by the way, from GERMBookstore in Philadelphia. Most of my little magazines were done without the proper equipment, in fact, without even a T-square. This was because I had to teach myself, slowly, how to use these tools. The crude, sloppy look of the magazines and all the mistakes seemed almost appealing to readers, I found. With each issue, readers criticized the errors and gently explained how they could be avoided. Thus, as time went on, the issues became progressively neater. I have handled the distribution of these booklets myself for the most part. I contacted bookstores around the world and offered copies for sale on consignment. Of course, there was no way to break even, but that was not the point. The magazines were readily accepted by libraries, even museums. I mean, you can see all of this like at the New York Public Library, okay. Whenever I traveled, I took some with me. To date, I have about a dozen sub-distributors, but most is still done by myself. I don't see a date as to when I wrote this. Immediately following the demise of Modern Girls after its 5th issue, a friend suggested that the title Bikini Girl should be used. He heard that title in a mid-60s science fiction film, and we decided it was great. For some reason, I suddenly became obsessed with the color pink, and I decided that every bikini girl would be pink. The color pink has been popularly associated with females in America since World War II, but research revealed that originally pink was for boys and blue was for girls. Scientific research discovered recently that male things, such as male plants and animals, thrived under pink light, but became ill, sluggish, even dead under blue light. Female living things, on the other hand, did better under blue light. The sadists originally dressed in pink. It has also been found that pink causes tremendous energy of a somewhat violent and masculine type, and that pink clothing has a stimulating effect and encourages loss of weight. In my mind, at the time, I felt pink was a symbol for energy. I was addicted to amphetamines at the time, sex, and sadomasochism, etc. In fact, pink was the preferred color of Le Marquis de Sade. Pink and black were, in fact, a very popular color combination in the new wave of the late 70s in the United States, New York, you know. The first Bikini Girl was Xeroxed onto pink paper, and only 50 copies were produced, numbered, and signed. It was thrown together within 24 hours and contained images and writing revealing my obsessions. I was in fact very mentally disturbed at the time, withdrawing from years of steroid medication, cortisone, for rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, a disease of the immune system. In fact, it was probably from a polio vaccine in 1962. I was an insomniac with psychotic episodes, plagued with hallucinations and nightmares. Also, I was drinking literally quarts of alcohol every day. My frenzy was directed into one very small TV guide-sized magazine. These few 50 copies were so well received that people actually sent me $20 bills for subscriptions. They were, I suppose, amused by a magazine which dealt with these themes: shoes, religion, especially Catholicism, China, Joe Bonamo, S&M and bondage, new wave music, art, amphetamines, go-go girls, and the East Village. The cost involved in producing Bikini Girl since issue 1 has been major. At least $1,500 is required to produce each issue. I saved this money by starving, literally, and experimenting with questionable ways to earn money. Avoiding prostitution as being too messy, I began work as a bondage model, since bondage was fascinating to me. Thus, Bikini Girl was supported through bondage. Perhaps it was growing up with severe arthritis, or perhaps it was years of confinement to a wheelchair, but I think now that bondage helps me to face the totality of my loneliness and my captivity in this body, which has caused me great pain. Needless to say, these explorations of my psyche through such controversial means lent a new excitement to the magazine project. In issue 2, a flip book was included. This was done by making a black and white 16mm film of a girl go-go dancing, then selecting the best footage from it. Every third frame was isolated and printed as an 8x10 photo enlargement. These photos were cut out and pasted to cardboard cards in order. The background was striped, like most things in Bikini Girl, and was made so it flickers a la psychedelia when the pages are flipped. The pages were assembled on a 15-foot wall and photographed with a 4x5 camera. The resulting photos were enlarged and then reduced, and screened for halftone. Few readers bothered to assemble and cut out the flip book, I suspect, but it works very well if one takes the time to work with it. The artist whose idea produced the flip book, M. Henry Jones, is still working with that go-go girl footage to produce a complex animation. I think it's done. I think you can see it on the internet. Issues 4 and 6 contain sound sheets, which are thin, flexible, 33 1/3 RPM sound recordings. The first is by a New England rockabilly band called the Furors. The second was recorded in England by a pop group called Occult Chemistry. I am very interested in producing sound recordings, and this was a good way to learn about the entire process of production. Issue 5 contains psychedelic glasses. I first found out about these at the Museum of Holography in New York City. They are weird-looking and produce starburst effects through a means of diffraction grating. You can imagine the delight of the manufacturer when I called to order 1,000 pair. These glasses are especially good for beach wear, watching black and white television, and, as one reader suggested, looking at snow in the winter. He said it makes the snow look like psychedelic cream of wheat. Issue 6 was printed on smooth semi-gloss paper, which felt very sexy to me at the time. I was newly married and in a state of shock when it was produced, so the cover was blank as a sort of statement about my mind. It is all text and no images, and contains a complete novel in very tiny 8-point type. I learned typography on an IBM machine in 1979, and issues 4, 5, and 6 were fairly neatly typeset. Since then, I have regressed somewhat to typewritten texts, reduced through a Xerox method, photocopy method, because it looks more personal. I am very proud to have included in each Bikini Girl chapters from a 600-page handwritten novel called Whispers on the Moon by Peter Fabriga. Peter is in his 20s and lives in Queens. He is a hallucinating schizophrenic, something I feel I can relate to. Also, my partner in many of my art projects, M. Henry Jones, has a tendency to hallucinate, and during the course of Bikini Girl's production has had 17 shock treatments. So this must have been written in 1979. Therefore, many of Bikini Girl's contributors are mentally ill and are attempting to express their sickness through writing and visual arts. The latest issue, number 8, there were 10,000 of these printed, by the way, it was a sellout, reverts to some of Bikini Girl's earlier qualities. Although each issue has been a completely different format, I have decided to return to the 5.5 by 8.5 size because it is the least expensive to produce. Also, Wet magazine, which is published in California and has a circulation of 20,000 bi-monthly, offered to include Bikini Girl as an insert. I hesitated to do this after a while for reasons which are not entirely clear to me. Recently, Impulse, a Canadian arts and culture magazine with a smaller circulation, has offered to include it as an insert, and I may go for that. I did, okay? Although I get very good reviews, have many subscribers, and many distribution outlets, I still have not solved many important problems in production and distribution. It remains an art project and is not financially solvent. I will continue to address these problems as long as the spirit is willing. You can get Bikini Girl in print and video format, also DVD, by contacting GERMBookstore in Philadelphia. It's germbooks@aol.com. Ask for Dave. You can buy them from me if you want. I am listed, but I like to boost, the good bookstores. I hope that you will look at Freak Wave 2, which is about to come out here in France. It's very easy to find. You can just order it directly. I hope that you have read or seen Modern Women by the Museum of Modern Art. I am mentioned there as Lisa Baumgardner, which is my maiden name. I'm mentioned on 6 pages, and I got 3 color plates. And this was my second group show at MoMA. And I was there this year. I have some clips up about it. It was a lot of fun. Being an artist and doing zines is not going to make you very much money, if ever. It is a passion. It is a necessity. And I think that the arts are very important. Small press publishing is very important. And I hope you have enjoyed hearing me read this, which I must have written around 1979, 1980. The paper I got in 1980, so it must have been written around 1980, 81. Peace out.